Welcome to Soundbreaker. I'm your host, Bob Shammy, and we're about to break the silence. Join me as we go behind the scenes and meet some of the most influential names in the music industry. Get ready for remarkable success stories that break the norms and defy the odds. From dreams to success, from challenges to victory. An exclusive backstage pass into the lives of music trailblazers as they create their own path to success. This is Soundbreaker. Welcome to Soundbreaker. In today's episode, we're talking to Josh Katz, who is a groundbreaker in the music industry. Thanks for joining us. For our listeners who might not be familiar with you, Josh, can you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Absolutely. So I am currently the founder of a company called Yellowheart. Yellowheart has a few different lines of business. We do Web3 based music products. We have a Web3 based ticketing platform, and we're also building communities within the entertainment and sports space.
Fantastic. I mean, I don't want to get into it in the beginning, but definitely I want to more elaborate on the Web3 and all of that. But we'll get to it later on in the interview. How do you get started in the music industry?
So I started it really as a kid. I was super into music. Grew up on Long Island, would get on the train, go to New York City, go to any concert I can, sneak into any club I can, and just kind of was always super passionate about it. Grew up in a household where my father was a guitar collector, so we had loads of guitars and banjos and stringed instruments in every room. Always had great players over, playing music in the house. So have just always it's been in my blood, really, since I was.
So you've been always surrounded and fed music when you were a kid.
Yeah, and I was passionate about it too. I actually really loved it.
I love these stories. I always like to go back to understand how somebody got started in this industry. And, it's not easy to get started, but I love the typical stories. Like, I snuck into the clubs. I worked my way into a concert and all of that. It's amazing. You mentioned in you had a Rolling Stone interview, which is pretty impressive. And you mentioned that you worked with Clive Davis as an assistant at Arista Records back in the day. Can you tell us a funny story or fun story from your early days working at Arista?
There were a lot. So I want to put this in perspective, okay? So this is me right out of college.
How old were you?
I was 22.
Wow.
And I was his third assistant. So he had his longtime assistant, Rose, had been with him 40 plus years. She'd go home at 5 o'clock. He had a second assistant, Tom, who would roll in, and I was the third assistant. Basically, the barely paid intern.
I bet, not to interrupt you, the third assistant, always the first one come in.
First to come in, last to leave, worked with him every Saturday, every Sunday. Yeah. I used to have to wait until he came back from dinner every night. So he'd leave maybe 7, 8 o'clock, go to a show, then go to dinner, sometimes come back to the office, sometimes not. But either way, I had to wait until we knew if he was coming back or not. So I'd be in the office till 1 or 2 a.m. most days.
Wow. Amazing.
So listen, when you're in that kind of environment, this was back really before everyone had a cell phone in their hands and things were word of mouth and passing notes, and a different time. So, I got to see a lot. So I'll tell you 2 interesting experiences I had with him. The first one was I spent a weekend with him where he was working on some music, and he had Elton John up. And I basically spent the entire day just looking after him and Elton John, which was actually pretty cool for a 22-year-old kid. I mean, Elton John's an icon. So, but to kind of be in this small environment with him, just kind of getting water.
Wait a second. Did Clive also produce? Is that what you're saying? He was producing records, or was just there as the label executive owner?
Okay, I don't think he was turning knobs, but he was definitely paying for recordings. I don't remember what the project was with Elton, but he was working with Elton.
He was hands-on, you're saying?
Yeah, very hands-on.
Wow.
Super hands-on. And then the next experience I had, because I worked with him on the weekends, was I was manning his office when Biggie got shot, and Biggie was on the label. And it was pretty insane. And I learned about it literally by answering the phone, and it was a reporter looking for a comment early in the morning, and then it was one hell of a day. I'll tell you that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. I mean, he seemed incredibly also dedicated for a successful
Oh my
record
God.
label owner. I mean, always in the office from what you're saying, always on top of his thing.
Always working, always working. And you know, the interesting thing is that when he'd come back at night, he'd
Yeah.
come back at night to listen to music. So he'd come back after a dinner or a showcase or wherever he was, and he'd be in his office with the music on 10, just blasting whatever it might have been that he was working on, because he'd say, he's like, listen, you know, I get interrupted all day long. This is my time where I could just focus on the music. So he'd sit in the
Wow.
office for hours on end, you know, yelling out to me, bring me the new Whitney Houston remix or bring me this or that. And I'd bring it on a CD and he'd put it on and it would be on 10 and sit there with his eyes closed, you know, listening to the same song over and over.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
this is a fact that a lot of people think it's all fun and games, but a lot of hard work and dedication in the music industry.
yeah, super
Yes.
hard work. I mean, it's a very disposable industry. You're either, you know, he's one of the few
Yes.
guys that's remained relevant for decades. You
Yes.
know, a lot of people get relevant for a couple of months at a time and they
Yeah.
fall off. No one remembers them. Maybe they get hot again a few years later, but that's it. You know, it's very difficult to remain relevant for years on end.
Interesting. Interesting. Um, you know, the transition from CD or physical era to digital era, for some people is a nightmare. And I was one of them, I admit, in the beginning. It's like what to do, where to go, who do you
Yeah.
send? What, I don't know. It was like somebody throw me somewhere and like, okay, I don't speak the language. And for some, it was a lottery ticket. Like, wow, this is where we're gonna make money. Where were you when that transition happened? As far as where were you? What in what era, or should I say, what stage in your business in the music industry were you, and how
Yeah.
did you adapt to it?
So it's interesting because I had been in the traditional music business of record labels. I left and worked in management for a guy named Jim Garno. He had at the time he was managing No Doubt, it was Gwen Stefani, Beck, Offspring, Chris Cornell, who unfortunately passed. A lot of big rock bands out of Orange County, um, and I kind of saw that start to happen.
Yeah.
And when it happened, I left the music business and I said, wow, for the first time ever, there's not a monopoly on shelf space. Where previously,
Yes.
if you wanted to put out an album, you needed to, you know, have access to shelf space. And it was monopolized and owned by, at the time, it was 5 or 6 major record labels. And I
Correct.
thought for the first time, well, now it's going to go to file sharing or streaming. And now it's wide open and anyone could make money and put out music and do well. So I left the music business right when that happened.
Wow. You left the music business.
I left the traditional music business. I'll tell you what
Yeah.
actually happened was, you know, with Jim, you know, the management company was called Rebel Waltz, and he also had a record label actually with Arista called Time Bomb. Time
Yeah.
Bomb, you know, and I kind of was the representative for Time Bomb in New York, at Arista, where I was very familiar and I knew everybody.
Yeah.
And the whole point of that record label was to create rock music, which Clive never had. He figured Jim would bring him the next big rock star, which never really happened. But I got to go to the Arista meetings. And when I was in these meetings at BMG and Arista, all these older executives kept talking about how they have to kill file sharing to save the CD. And for
Yes.
me, being young at the time, I kind of thought that that was suicide. I go, wow, right now, you know, plus BMG had just acquired Napster. And I was
Yeah.
like, why don't you guys just put up some gates and start charging a couple of cents and we'll build it? And no one wanted to hear it. They wanted to kill this thing right away and save the CD, which was making them tons of money. And I just said, oh, these guys are going to die a slow death. It's a shame, but I'm out of here. And I left.
Wow. Interesting. Really interesting. Um, jump into the future. You work with Yellow Hearts. Obviously,
Yep.
that's your latest endeavor and your new project that you've been at it for some years, which has led to Kings of Lions NFTs, which has
Yeah.
generated over $2 million. Congrats on that. How did the blockchain and NFTs, I would say, or how do you see the blockchain and NFT in the music evolving or in the music industry? Like, how is the
You
whole
know,
thing kind of together? I'm trying to put the question together because I don't understand all of it. So maybe you
yeah.
can help us.
Yeah. Well, you know, once again, we're dealing with history repeating itself. We have an
Yeah.
industry that
Yeah.
took almost 2 decades to adopt to streaming. Now the record industry has become a very, very simple game where
Yeah.
there's a certain amount of revenue thrown off from Spotify, Apple, and any other streamers every year.
Correct.
And
Correct.
the whole goal is to just get as much market share of that as you can. And that's it.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
now these labels have adopted, the staffs have gotten much smaller. They're basically marketing hit artists. They're not really developing artists, but they're just going after market share. They just want as much of that money as possible.
Yeah.
So they're not looking to adopt this new technology. What this new technology does is it allows for a file to go out to people who play it, whether it's Spotify, Apple, any player, and it allows
Okay.
for the royalties to be pre-programmed into the file to say that I own this amount of writer share, this amount of publisher share, this amount of master. And
Yeah.
it can automatically pay all of those participants upon being played. So what it does is it cuts out all the middlemen that have been rent seeking on musicians and entertainers for years, and it allows for direct payments on as they happen to those performers. So it's super revolutionary in the way that it really will look out for artists and make sure they're paid, give them full transparency into their royalties, into their plays, into their money, plus make it so they don't have to wait for their money and they don't have anyone's hands in their pockets anymore.
Very interesting. Very
Yeah.
interesting. Really, very interesting. Um, I mean, you successfully navigated through various transitions throughout your career, from a record label and becoming a tech, entrepreneur into the tech business. In your opinion, what's the key to stay relevant in the business, especially those days where there's tech
Yeah.
involved and all of that?
The tech part well, I'll tell you, the key to staying relevant is to just keep moving. You got to just keep moving forward every day. You wake up and you just keep going forward. You don't stand still. This is a business that, you have to be active in. If you stand still, you're kind of dead instantly. The tech thing is something totally different because tech is something that you actually have to understand and be passionate about pushing it forward. I got lucky where, when I sold our last company, I was just super into blockchain. I learned about this and we were paying a lot of royalties at that company, and it was just a pain in the butt. I mean, I was constantly figuring out who pays who and who pays what. And, it's just like, and no one's ever satisfied. So when I learned about this technology and the fact that
Yeah.
the auto splits, I was like, this is incredible. This is really what it's all about. And I went on a mission to basically create what I thought would be the next format.
Yes. Great. This is great. We're going to go back again to Yellow Hearts and the blockchain, and how did Yellow Heart integrate NFTs into the ticketing? Can you explain that for us?
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
now you also added the ticketing thing to it.
We did. We launched an entire ticketing product. So
Yeah.
let me explain it like this. It's not even about NFTs. It's about what's called Web3. So Web3 encompasses a few different technologies. It has NFTs, which are a type of file. It has the blockchain. It has the metaverse, and a few other areas. So what we did is we built a ticketing platform that encompasses all of these technologies. And to start with the blockchain, what happens is when something goes on a blockchain, it's basically a public database. The database that everyone could see. So if I put some information on that database, you could see it, every person could see it. So right now, the ticketing industry suffers from all types of bad actors, all types of fraud, all types of people, trying to sell tickets for inflated prices. There's what's called speculative ticketing, where prices are, people don't even own the ticket, but they put it up on a secondary for some astronomical price, hope that someone buys it. And if they do, great, I'll figure out how to get it for less and I'll make the spread. But I don't even own it. So now, if a ticket is issued on a blockchain, there can only be one owner of the ticket. It's clear who owns it. It's clear what they paid. It's the next person, it's clear what they paid. And it basically creates what's called a chain of custody. So now there's full transparency into how many tickets exist, who issued them, where's the money flowing. The next part of that is something called smart contracts. So you use these smart contracts to issue these tickets. When you issue these tickets, you basically pre-program, the same way we do with the music, into the ticket what the splits are. So when a ticket gets sold the first time, we could say, okay, give 90% to the artist, give 5% to the promoter, 5% to the venue, and so on. Where it gets interesting, though, is we could also pre-program the secondary sale. So we could say, okay, if it gets sold a second time on a secondary, automatically send 20% back to the artist and 10% back to the promoter and give the fans 70%. And it's locked in. There's not much they could do about it. It's all transparent, so the fan knows what they're getting into, and it actually pays the artist once again as the transaction happens. It doesn't have to go to some third party who then, some accounting, mechanism. It pays on demand on the blockchain. The blockchain has what's called a wallet system. So you could set up what's called a wallet, a blockchain wallet, and have your funds flow directly to your wallet. So if you and I are putting out tickets and you're getting 50% and I'm getting 50%, immediately when it sells, the money flows to our individual wallets, not to a third party that then has to divvy it up and take a fee for doing so.
Well, so let me ask you something. So what are you saying basically, that Yellow Hearts makes the deal with, let's say, Live Nations, and there's a concert coming up for whoever, and let's say any artist, any popular artist right now, and let's say Taylor Swift. So basically, the tickets will be bought through Yellow Hearts, or they'll buy them through Live Nation or other ticketing, and then they can, if they want to resell their ticket, they could do it through Yellow Hearts.
Well, the way that it works is our technology actually works as what's called a white label or an API with other companies. So they don't need us other than to put our technology in place. And when they issue the ticket, it's issued through our technology on what's called a public blockchain.
So you have a pre-deal set up already. So all of that appears.
Yeah, with all of the third-party companies are able to use our software and just basically issue these tickets on the blockchain and then manage it themselves.
Great. So that's pretty much really, Josh, eliminates the old days back in New York. I remember when I used to walk by, Madison Square Garden, the peddling of tickets. A bunch of guys selling. Yes. Whether they fake or real, but inflating prices, as you said. So pretty much eliminates all that bootleg and all that nonsense.
Yeah.
So this was somebody would profit from that increase.
Yeah, exactly. So imagine that you were selling eggs, right? And I bought up all the eggs and I owned them all now. And you sold them for $1, but now I'm selling them for $10.
Yes.
You'd be like, what the hell? In this case, that $9, a portion of it flows back to you every time I make a sale.
This is great. So everybody makes money.
Artist makes more money, the team makes more money, and these scalpers who came in and basically have been ripping off fans are now identified on a public ledger. They could either be incentivized to help mitigate risk or just eliminate it.
Absolutely. Amazing. Wow. Okay. Thanks for the info, buddy. Really. Thank you.
Yeah.
Please.
I'll tell you, there's one more part to it. The other part is the NFT.
Yes,
part.
That's what we're here for.
Absolutely.
Please.
That's where it gets fun. So, an NFT, which I'm assuming a lot of your listeners are familiar with, but probably have a bad taste in their mouth over a lot of these profile collections that came out the last couple of years, a lot of the Ponzi schemes going on, a lot of bad actors in the space, which absolutely happened. Luckily, it kind of died. But what it does is right now, a ticket used to be a ticket stub. It used to be a piece of paper. Then it moved to basically a QR code, and that's it. It's a code on your phone. You scan it, and it dies. Yeah. We've brought back the ticket stub with the actual NFT. So imagine a ticket that interacts with you, that pre-show asks you, oh, you're a VIP. Do you want parking? Can we get you a drink? Then you enter the show. It knows you entered the show and says, oh, after the show, do you want to go to a nightclub? Here's a free pass. Here's a first round of drinks on a sponsor. And then continues engaging with you through the show and then after the show as well. So now you bought that ticket for Taylor Swift. It's an NFT. We know that you used it. We know that you checked it in. So now the next show comes up for Taylor Swift. That ticket is your entry to get in line ahead of other people because we know you're a verified fan who went to a show. It's on the public ledger, so the whole world knows it. We know that they could see for themselves that nobody's cheating anyone. And now you become a preferred fan. Now you've gone to 8 Taylor Swift shows. You jump even further ahead in the line of priority because you become a super fan. And this all is public for everyone to see.
Wow, amazing. And you came up with all of that yourself? I mean, this is pretty fascinating.
I spent a lot of years really going deep on this. In 2018, I got funded by Live Nation. And I went forward, and they gave me the funding to basically materialize all this. I worked closely at the time with a guy named Jared Smith, who was running Ticketmaster. We did it in
Yeah.
stealth, but we went deep on kind of, hey, what's keeping you up at night? You're running this huge ticketing organization. What are the headaches that are killing you right now? And we were able to solve some of them. Some of them we were not. But I had the luxury of getting good funding and to be left alone for a number of years to really get deep on this and bring super smart people. I'm by far the least smart on the team.
I wouldn't say that, but this is incredible. And so you would say, so is it okay to say that Live Nation is one of your investors, early
Yeah, they
investors?
are an investor. Yes.
Great. Ticketmasters too, only just the
Yeah,
gentleman use. Oh,
it's the same company.
oh, they bought them. That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, amazing. Definitely a lot of information, a lot of insights that I didn't even know. I'm sure a lot of our listeners will find it very beneficial. You had obviously an incredible journey so far, Josh, and the music industry known for its challenges and setbacks. And can you share a difficult moment that you faced in your career that you had, and how did you overcome it?
Oh my God. So with Yellow Heart, we were ready to launch in Q2 of 20, and the pandemic basically put us out of business. Live Nation cut all funding to the company. Tickets went
Yeah.
away for 18 months, and all of a sudden, no one really cared about this cool new ticketing technology. So I was out of business for a pretty long time where I had to decide, okay, am I going to weather the storm? Am I going to go out of my own pocket and fund this and keep people employed and keep this going? Or am I going to let my dream die and let it go away? And instead, I spent all of COVID basically working twice as hard, trying to raise money without success. I was not able to raise capital because people are like, oh, yeah, it's a great idea. When ticketing comes back, we'll love to talk to you. But no one knew when it was coming back.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned early when we first started Kings of Leon. So that was
Yes.
kind of one of the breakthrough moments where I spent most of the pandemic in 20 really just calling every artist I knew. And luckily I know a lot of artists, and I was trying to get some of them to understand why this technology made sense for music. Now you have to remember, most artists make their income from touring, and touring
Yes.
was at a dead halt. People were sitting at home. Plus a lot of them had finished records that they didn't want to put out. When COVID hit, it hit in March of 20. Most people put out
Correct.
albums, around that time or early summer, and then they tour from the summer through the end of the year. So there were a lot of bands and artists that were sitting on albums that were not out yet. They were going to put them out, but they didn't want to put them out in COVID because they couldn't tour after they put them out. So I started speaking to all these artists about, hey, let's put your music out as an NFT. And people were just like, huh? What? And it took a lot of convincing. I got turned down by everybody. But I finally got one band to step up in December of 20, a band named Portugal the Man. And they stepped up, and they were the first band to ever put music out on NFT and build a format around it and build a community in the blockchain space. It was a small release. It actually got picked up by Rolling Stone, and it was cool, but didn't get the big attention. But what it did was it gave me a use case where now all these people I've been speaking to who were saying, are you out of your mind? Shut up. What are you talking about? I was like, well, look at this. This is incredible, blah, blah, blah. So at that point, I got the Kings of Leon to step up, and that was big. So when they stepped up, we ended up doing the first ever NFT and blockchain ticket, which are lifetime front row tickets to the band. If you own one of these for life, you get a chauffeur and a SUV and front row and a VIP room for life. And then we also did their album, which was sitting in the can, unable to come out. We put it out as NFT, and over the course of 2 weeks,
COVID. That is all during COVID.
During
correct?
COVID, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Over 2 weeks, we sold $2.5 million worth of these NFTs, and that was more than they had made off of their last 5 albums combined at their record label.
Unbelievable.
So it was a
Pretty
massive
much
success.
Basically, as they say, there's a light in the end of the tunnel. But in your case, there was no light. You created your own light.
It was
in the end of the tunnel.
Pure hustle, Bob. Literally,
you became innovative. You innovative. That's what you did.
If I tell you, I was literally, spending my days talking to everyone in the U.S. I'd spend my nights all night long talking to people in Asia because crypto and blockchain, which I was super into, was only happening in Asia. No one in the US was thinking about it, talking about it. They couldn't care less. But in Asia, there were a lot of people that were super into it. So these became my people. And then I like early morning, I'd be up trying to talk to people in Europe, but I was going 24/7, which was fine because it was COVID. I wasn't leaving the house much. It was just like that time, but it was
Yeah.
instead of sitting back and saying I'm going to do nothing, I literally worked twice as hard.
Amazing. Very inspiring, my friend. Very inspiring. Kudos to you. Definitely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Definitely. Yes. Um, you know, the music business, which people don't know a lot of these stories, behind the scenes, it has a lot of misconception. What's I would say, a common misconception in the music business or in the music industry that you come across or you see?
Well, there's a lot of them. The interesting thing is that because of social media, there's so much more transparency these days where all of these artists are literally broadcasting everything they do. Oh, I ate a sandwich, and oh, I'm in the studio, and obviously they're broadcasting the good, making it out like they're living these glorious lives, on their yacht, on the plane, on this and that. So there's a lot less misconception than there used to be. Plus, people tell stories. Oh, I got ripped off by this record label, or this promoter never paid me. And like these stories get out because it's really hard to do things negative to people and it gets out immediately. People literally go on social media. They have these large followings and they just tell the world what just happened to them. So there's not nearly as many. The one thing I will say is that, there is a misconception, I think, around how much money a lot of these artists might have because of the fact that, you need to really have a career to start making a lot of money. And there's a lot of artists that might have had a hit or two, but actually never made any money. You think they would have, but they never did.
Wow. I mean, it's pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. This business, it's all about collaboration. As I would say, one of the key elements in the music industry, everybody collaborates together. Is there a moment or a collaboration that you could tell us a story about, that someone that you work with and left an impression or an impact on you through collaborating with somebody else?
Yeah, and I've had a few. I'll tell you about two of them, and they both involve mega iconic artists who passed away. The first was with a rapper named XXX Tentacion, who left this world way too early. And, at Yellow Heart, we did an NFT release with his family, with his mother, with his manager, his attorney, great people. And working with them, I got brought into their universe and their family, and I'm still part of it. And I felt the power of Ja. That's what his name is, his ex's name is, and the family. And it was really transformative for me. And the irony was that I was familiar with X, but I didn't know him well. But at the time during COVID, my 8-year-old son would put on X's music in the house, and my wife and I would be like, "Huh, it's a little inappropriate for an 8-year-old," just like very like the lyrics, just like not even like the explicits, but just like the topics that he's rapping about, and suffice to say, it's funny how the world works. A year later, I'm suddenly working with his mother and his estate. I'm putting out his stuff, and we got brought in like we're family. And now I feel so close to these people. It's pretty amazing. So that was just an incredible, experience I had really working with these guys.
Wow. And the second one, you said there's two of them.
The second one was Jerry Garcia from the Grateful Dead.
Yes.
Where, a little bit after COVID, I worked with his estate manager, and we were really looking. Jerry was the leader of the iconic Grateful Dead, and everyone knows him as on stage, making music that everyone loves and touring and selling out stadiums. But what people didn't realize was that Jerry spent just as much time making art as he did making music. He'd come off tour and he'd break out the paintbrushes and he'd make art. So when the NFT craze happened, the estate, did a deal with us, and we started looking at what art could we put out. As we were searching through Jerry's art, I'd spend hours on Zooms with the estate, and we literally go through every piece of art Jerry ever made. And there's about 600
Yes.
pieces he left behind. And we were talking about it. And then one day, a guy named Mark Allen says, hey, by the way, I'm pretty sure he made some digital art too. And that's the whole essence of what this NFT art movement was. We were like, what? He's
Correct.
like, yeah, let me look into that. Comes back, and it turns out there's 21 pieces of digital art that Jerry Garcia made on a Mac computer right before he died. In fact, when Jerry died, he literally left his computer open and he was working on one of them. And these kind of went to the wayside. No one ever thought about them. The computers went into a storage facility, and that was it. So we uncovered these pieces. We ended up putting a sale up of them. And then we ended up partnering with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and we did a big exhibit in Cleveland of the art pieces, his guitars, the computer, and it ended up being one of the most trafficked exhibits last year at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But it was all kind of Mark being like having this, wait a second, I think there's digital art. Vis-a-vis, 6 months later, we're opening up an exhibit at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And that was just like a pretty magical experience.
You know, I have to say, Josh, I do a lot of interviews, but yours from the beginning to now, so far, I would say, every story is very extremely inspiring. Every story that you told us.
Thank you.
Yeah, which is great. Technology, as we both know, and everyone knows, that significantly changed the landscape of the music industry. And, you know, and my question is, how advanced technology influenced your work in the music industry as a whole? Well, we know about, you know, the company you started, you know.
Yeah, listen, I'm a big believer in technology. I'm probably too progressive. I've watched as the music industry as a whole has been fairly slow to adopt to technology. You know,
Correct.
what they find is, and frankly, I'm dealing with it with Ticketmaster right now, where Ticketmaster has coming off a banner year, best year in history. You know, everyone went out after COVID and bought expensive concert tickets, and you know, went to as many live events as they could. Company made a fortune, and if it's not broken, why fix it? So, and that's kind of the way it works. Same thing's going on in recorded music with Spotify. It took 20 years to catch up. Now we figured it out. Much less staff, much less overhead. Let's get as much market share as we can with as few artists as we can. And now getting the next phase to adopt is going to unfortunately take something big to happen in that industry, both live and recorded. They're not jumping up saying, oh yeah, let's use this new technology and move away from streaming on the major DSPs. They're not jumping off of Ticketmaster. Their platform is 40 years old and is broken as could be. It's terrible. It's held together by freaking duct tape. But are they moving off of it? No, because why should we? If the infrastructure is in place, people are used to trying to buy concert tickets and not getting them. They buy them on the secondary. Why change anything? No one's. We don't need to. So that's the interesting thing, is that the technology is there, but it needs to actually get adopted.
So you're saying the music industry really hasn't took any steps forward to adapt new ways of doing things because of technology. They still follow the same old say, if it's not broken, why fix it?
Pretty much. They adopt slowly as they need to. I'll give you an example in ticketing. Pre-COVID, nobody wanted to use digital tickets. It was all paper still, which I thought was insane, right? I was in these meetings at Ticketmaster telling them they should be using facial technology. They thought I was insane. Okay. Now, post-COVID, everyone got used to QR codes. And now suddenly the digital ticket's a thing. And that's where like about 90% of tickets, how they go now. But it took COVID for that to happen.
Yes. I mean, we all know COVID was the opening door for all digital transactions and digital way of living and digital life. And yes.
QR code. Think about the QR code from a menu to anything you do. Pre-COVID, QR codes were around forever, but no one would use them.
Used it.
Now they're everywhere we go in life.
Is it safe to mention the word AI? And what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I hear a lot of negative things. I don't think it's negative. In my opinion, shouldn't be. But again, you know, people with still the old ways of doing business, this feel is a big threat. I don't think it's a threat, but.
Okay, so here's the thing. So think about it like this, okay? It could be negative where two computers, I heard a story actually yesterday about two computers that got so smart, they developed their own language and were talking to each other. So that can be pretty scary, right? Where suddenly they think they're smarter than us and they just keep accelerating and there's nothing we can do about it. Where it gets really interesting is it could really create efficiencies around so many things. It could create efficiencies in the studio. And now, if you look at the new generation, look at the kids today, they're used to all this stuff. They're going to be used to computer generated music. And that's what's going to end up happening. Where the future stars, you'll still have your mega stars, your Taylor
Oh, you
Swifts,
mentioned
your
a taboo word, uh, AI
what?
generated music, and not for
Yeah,
me, but
yeah.
a lot of people, it's a taboo word.
But
Please,
it's a
I want to hear
reality.
more about it. You had the
It's a
guts to say
reality.
it, so please, I want to hear
Listen,
more about it.
so I could right now, I could go and pull the top 10 and I could plug them into AI and say, okay, make me 10 tracks like this that have a
Yeah,
different bridge and,
yeah,
really are a little shorter and maybe they're in a different key and enough that they're different, right? And they're done and they'll be done by the time we get done here, like instantly, boom. Then I go back
yeah.
and I say, well, this bridge is too short, make it 10 seconds longer. And then I get it to where I need it to go. It goes into my Pro Tools. And next thing you know, within a couple of hours, I have 10 songs that mimic the top 10. So it gets to a point where it's really interesting to make music. But then the other part of it is the super creative producers are going to go in and use this technology to create things that they never could create before.
Yes, using AI to help them produce better music.
Yes, much better
Absolutely.
music. But better is
Yes,
relative. So let me ask you, like,
yes.
to this day, there could be a 3 chord song that's a hit across the board day and night. It happens every day,
Y-
right?
Yes,
Simple,
yes.
great, catchy, like we all love it. We're all humming it. It's a mega hit. So that's not going to go away. You'll still have that person that just hits the guitar, piano, a DJ, whatever it might be, and they're going to write a great song. What you're going to start to see happen, though, is producers coming out with mega hits, songs that people love that were just produced in the studio without real musicians.
Hmm. I mean, it happened all the time with all the modules. I
Of
mean,
course.
when electronic music came in, pop music, you don't have a whole band.
I mean,
It's all music through modules and the sounds and all of
I
this.
remember back in the early 2000s, people would be
Yeah.
all upset. Oh, they used a drum machine on that track. That's garbage.
Here we go. Yes,
I mean,
yes, yes, yes. I
so
used to
like,
walk into studios, I remember, and used to see stacks of all kind of old vinyl records. They used to sample and get inspired by it,
of
you
course.
know?
So now
Yes.
those will be the roots of creating new songs. Make me a
So
song
what's the
that sounds
difference?
like
What's
this.
if AI learned all of this
There's no
and
difference.
helped produce,
It'll
yeah,
be
that's
better.
it. Yes.
It'll be better.
Yes.
So,
Absolutely.
so I have an 11-year-old son, right? And when I look at the content that he consumes, he
Yeah.
has no idea if it was recorded at Electric Lady Studios with
Yeah.
engineers and all this, or if it was some guy's basement, wherever. He has no clue, nor does he care.
Yeah.
So I just think this is once again the way. Remember when Pro Tools came around and everyone suddenly was in the home studios and out of the big rooms? This is just going to be more tools that allow for talented people to make great content.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Well said. Definitely well said. How do you stay updated, Josh? Innovative, or how do you get all your ideas and to keep going forward?
I
You know.
try to just, be educated and I try to keep my mind clear, which is hard to do.
Yes.
But that's the hardest part. As I'm getting older, it becomes more difficult.
Yeah.
As a younger guy, I had endless ideas and endless energy. I still have a lot of energy, but it's
Yes.
harder to come up with the ideas now. But you do what you can.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, Anyways, advice to people who in the industry who wants to start, who just started in the industry. As we both know, this industry full of gatekeeping, and everybody holds the key, and they don't want to share anything with anybody. Like, if you can give us some of the tips and challenges that they could, kind of overcome and build their own unique path in the industry.
Yeah, I think the best thing to do is to kind of know yourself and
Hmm.
know what you're capable of and really try to go for it, but at the same time in the early years sit back and learn from great people, surround yourself with smart talented people who are also generous, aren't jealous or bitter and actually want to see you succeed. Those people are hard
Hmm.
to find, but they are out there. um,
Yes.
and then after that my advice would be just go for it. Like, don't hold back.
Hmm.
Like, just go all in as hard as you can. Be an animal, don't stop, and just like have like eye of the tiger. Like, you got to go for it.
Believe in yourself.
Yeah.
Yes. Um, Anything before we wrap up? Anything that you wanna plug in? You're working on upcoming exciting projects that you want to tell us about? Tell our listeners, everybody, to look
Nothing
for.
at the moment I
Yeah,
want to talk about. Once again, I'm in a space that is kind of going through a transitional phase right now.
yeah,
Everything involved in what we do, even though it's music and entertainment based, got kind of looped into the greater NFT, crypto, blockchain stuff, which was highly demonized, particularly around crypto in the US.
uh
So
huh,
we went from about 120 miles an hour to now we're going 55, and we're doing really cool projects. Ticketing platform we've built out is revolutionary. It will completely change live as it gets adopted. I'm dealing with a very slow to adopt industry, although they're very aware of it, yet slow to
hmm,
adopt. So hopefully we'll start to see more mainstream use of some of this technology, either from us or other people. And it's going to benefit
great.
consumers. And that's what it's really all about.
I love that. I love to hear all the innovation, all the positivity, because of technology. How faster you evolving, and how faster you going forward. Even, you know, technology definitely it's
Oh,
to be used to our benefit and help us grow in the
yeah,
in
no,
the
but it's
in the
what you said
industry.
earlier.
Yes.
It's that,
Yeah.
we built it and we built it, over about 5 years or so, but now it's the
Yeah.
adoption. And now I'm
Yes.
watching as you said, the gatekeepers are sitting back
Yes.
saying, this is brilliant. Well, do we really need to put it in place? Or we're going to make more money? Well, and it's just kind of me now at other people's beck and call as to like,
Yeah.
okay, are we going to scale this massively or not? And we're
Yeah.
working on it, but it's taking time.
Great. This is great. Well, I want to say thank you for joining us, Josh. And to conclude today's episode with Soundbreakers, please make sure you follow us on social media and stay tuned for our next episode. See ya.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
All right.
This podcast is presented by Music Dash, world's first AI-powered independent distribution CMS. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to share the Soundbreaker Podcast. And if you are joining us on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Until next time.